Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Just a couple of thoughts and a question from me. First, Senator Blumenthal, while I don't think he was diminishing the value of the Restore Act overly, but I want to respond. The Restore and Accountability Act is about providing the best care and quality opportunities for veterans. I think it has a side benefit. It's great to work. It's better to work in a place in which you don't allow people who are misbehave, commit fraud, negligent to the patient to continue to work there or to just move them to another position as the VA has done. And I'm committed to trying to make sure that the Restore Act is something we accomplish. It was overwhelmingly supported in a bipartisan way. In the past, it ran into legal and regulatory kind of challenges, and we need to work to make sure we get the law right. But eliminating people at any agency that misbehave is a good thing for the customers they serve and a good thing for the people they work with. I would like, a couple of my colleagues mentioned the Inspector General. Both Republican and Democrat colleagues mentioned the use of the Inspector General. I'd add for a second time my public voice to the importance of restoring an Inspector General to the Department of Veterans Affairs. And as we try to figure out how to right-size the VA, the Inspector General has been our ally in finding ways to do things better or things that happen at the VA that make no sense or inefficient. And an Inspector General is hugely important to the efforts that you indicate you're trying to accomplish. And so I just highlight again the value of an Inspector General. And then I wanted to, and we also, the majority, but we, as the chairman of the committee, have requested information from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Some of it has been answered, and other components of our inquiries, some of the things you heard from particularly the minority, the Democratic side of our committee, we're asking for that kind of information too, and I highlight that for you to return to the VA to encourage the answering of members of Congress's question. And that only reiterates my view that this committee will and should have significant opportunities to participate in the decision-making process about workforce at the VA. And finally, Mr. Engelbaum, you've tried several times to finish a sentence that I think is important, at least you think it's important because you tried to say it a number of times, and it has to do with the 83,000 or the 80,000. I think you've tried to explain that is not necessarily the goal. My guess is that and that was certainly reported in press and maybe was in a memo at the VA, so I'm not discounting it. Somebody may have come up with this number. But what is your goal in regard to increasing? Let me ask you this question. Is it conceivable you'd have the analysis done at the VA and determine that in certain areas you need more employees, not less? And is the goal to figure out how to get rid of 80,000 people, or is it a different goal?
It's the former, Senator. Obviously, we want to be efficient and we want to be lean. As I was trying to get across, you have to start with something when you start with the planning process. When we're talking about the return, we're talking about a 15% is what we're looking at when you're talking about over 470,000. But, and I will be very clear, and I think the Secretary will be very clear on this, we are going to do our review. We're going to let the process fall out, and ultimately he will make a decision what the final number would be based upon that analysis that we are conducting. As you rightly said, we probably should plus up in other areas. We will take down in other areas. We will also looking at what we're going to stop doing as far as specific mission. And as I mentioned, flatlining bureaucracies, numerous things that we want to take a look at. But if you don't start with a goal, or start with some sort of planning factor, aggressive planning factor to force people to think and think outside the box and come up with options, then you're going to go nowhere. And so that's what really that is. That goal, that planning factor enables us to start our in-depth analysis, bottom-up review that we are conducting with the entirety of the VA chain of command in order to arrive at a recommendation for the Secretary later on this year.
I wanted to have you the opportunity to finish your sentence or your thoughts, your paragraph. I, too, have indicated my concern with a number. The goal ought not be a number. The goal ought to be determine what the mission of the Department of Veterans Affairs is and how many people in the workforce it takes to accomplish that mission in an effective and efficient way. And that, I think, members of this committee are seemingly willing to help the VA accomplish. The 80,000 number has really created the uncertainty, the difficulty, the criticism that comes from those statements. So we look forward to answers to our questions, and we look forward to working to figuring out how to right-size the Department of Veterans Affairs, but not in an arbitrary way. And I thank you, and if you report that to your superiors, and I don't know that that's a poor word in today's world, if that you would report that to your colleagues, and particularly see about getting us answers to our previous questions.
Absolutely, Senator.
Thank you very much. We're going to recess so that Senator Blumenthal and I can walk across the street and vote. And the second panel, you're welcome to stay in your seats or take maybe the thing so we're ready when we come back, if you'll be ready to take their chairs where these witnesses are now seated. Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for your presence.